Welcome to our final segment, part 3, and steps 11 through 15 of the 15 steps you must take for success before you write a grant proposal, with step number 15 being the magic step. Remember that. So stay around for that one. It'll be well worth it. This is Nonprofit Docs, and I'm your host, Dr. Marc Hardy, the former director of nonprofit certificate programs at the University of Notre Dame. So let's go through these last 5 steps to get you more money. Step 11, philanthropy has come to demand solutions and not band-aids. This is about the change from charitable expenditure to social investment. In the last 20, 30 years, the expectations of funders have evolved from charity for charity's sake to looking at philanthropy as an investment with a social improvement return. You see, it used to be that donors gave to United Way or Catholic Charities or Salvation Army because they feed, clothe, and house the most needy among us. But now funders expect nonprofits to move the needle of social progress. They want to know how many people's lives have been improved, not just sustained. They're requesting to know what social return on their investment they can expect. So they're requiring program evaluation reports from those they have funded so they can judge for themselves whether their donations are having an effect on the community and society as a whole. And the bad news is that evaluation takes planning, time, and financial resources. But the good news is that most foundations and donors are now willing to fund evaluation expenses and allow you to build it into your grant proposal budget. This is especially true of government grants. I'll give you an example of that. When I was at Butler University, we had a rather large government grant, and it was a 5-year grant. There were summer programs for 5 years, and they insisted that we build into the budget an expense for evaluation of the program. And we built in $25,000 a year for 5 years. So $125,000 of the grant was for evaluation, and it was a $1.4 million grant. So that gives you an idea of what they're willing to fund. Step number 12. How do we evaluate the ripple effect of our program or initiative if they want evaluation? I mean, how will your program affect your community or the world? For one thing, you can measure your programs with quantitative data. What do the numbers reveal? For instance, if you operate a homeless shelter, you should be tracking how many people you get employment for. And were they still employed at 90 days or 6 months, a year? And how many now have permanent places to live? Do they own or rent? You need to track your numbers in whatever area of nonprofits you're in. There's also the qualitative side of the evaluation. These are the stories from the people you served. These are from the surveys of those you helped. And what about testimonials from family members and employers? You see, I've always believed as a researcher that quantitative metrics can tell you what is going on, but qualitative analysis reveals why it's going on. An example of this was shared by a sociology professor whose name I don't remember, but I remember his example. He stated that statistics revealed that during the summer months, ice cream sales increased. At the same time, violent crimes increased. Therefore, does that mean that ice cream sales has a relationship to violent crimes? No, probably not. Again, numbers tell us what is happening, but qualitative research can tell us why. There are also systems and software available to help with evaluation and how to determine your nonprofit's ripple effect on the community. If you're interested in this, I interviewed an expert in this area, Janet Hansel, about a system she uses called ripple effect mapping, and I'll put a link to that interview below. Step number 13. This is about changing your mindset about funding. You see, many of us in the nonprofit sector feel that we're begging funders for money, especially funds from foundations. But Instead of looking at your relationship with foundations as unapproachable institutions that hold your fate in their hands, it's important to see them as equal partners. Understand that by law, they must grant money every year, usually 5% or more of their investment assets, or they will be in jeopardy of losing their nonprofit status. Even government funders have to give away what they are allocated for that year because otherwise their budget will be cut the next year. I like to use the analogy of a train sitting on a train track. The track represents the nonprofit's strategic plan, which includes its mission, vision, and goals. In other words, the tracks point in the direction that the train needs to travel. The train represents the nonprofit's ability to move from point A to point B, and it has the power, the human power, to solve a problem. The foundation or funder does not have the power of the train to solve the many problems of society, but it does have the ability to supply fuel to the nonprofit train in the form of funds so that the engine can get to point B and address the problem. So funders need the engine and the power of nonprofits to do the work. Nonprofits, in turn, need the fuel or cash for their engine to accomplish the work. One cannot exist without the other. So think of your relationship with funders like this. And remember, foundations are looking to fund nonprofits and programs that have high probabilities of success. So the more credible your nonprofit is and the better its track record of doing what it says it's going to do, the better its chances of getting funded. Again, understand that the funder-fundee relationship is one of equal partnership, not of master and servant. Step number 14, don't waste the foundation's time or your time. Now we're getting to the really good stuff. This is the end and this is the good stuff. But it is something that most grant proposal writers are petrified to do. But remember, this is a partnership. You've done your research, you know everything there is to know about your potential funder, but perhaps there are a few lingering questions that you have. Perhaps you're still not sure whether your stated need is in line with their funding priorities. And this is why it's good to make a note of your questions that weren't answered in your research during part one. It's also why you need to be very clear about your need statement. Now, we are going to move into the act of actually contacting the funder. That's right. A lot of grant proposal writers don't do this. A lot of nonprofits don't do it. So first, you want to find out who the key person is within the foundation that oversees your area. You want to know if it's the program director or program manager, the executive director, and so on. This information is usually available on their website along with their emails and phone numbers. This would be the person who understands the subject area of your proposal and will be reading and critiquing your proposal. But it's important not to waste their time asking about things that are already on their website or on GuideStar, Foundation Directory Online, or Google searches. And once you have identified that person, if they have an email, start there. Explain that you are writing to avoid wasting their time and yours because you want to make sure that your need for a grant truly fits into their guidelines. Then share a short version of your need statement explaining the problem, the population, the geographic area. This should not be more than a paragraph. And then thank them for their time and wait for a response. If they respond that no, your need statement does not fit within their funding parameters, then thank them and move on to the next funder. But do not ignore them. Do not forget them. Treat them as though they might someday fund one of your programs because foundation focus and guidelines change all the time. You want to invite them to your board meetings, to your events, to your fundraisers, etc., even though they decline to look at your proposal. Now, they may not come to your fundraisers, to your events, to your board meetings, but you will be remembered because hardly anybody does this. Trust me on this. If they reply that yes, it sounds like something they would consider, then ask them if they would have a few minutes for a phone call to clarify some other issues. Maybe your solution statement, or maybe the amount of funding you might be requesting. Now, I know this may seem intimidating, and some program officers may not be receptive. But let me share a story about a program officer who got testy with me because I asked her a question, and she curtly told me that the information I requested was on their website. And I kindly replied to her, I said, well, Miss, whatever her name was, I'm sorry, it's not on your website. I have looked all over your website. I cannot find it. Could you point out where on your website it is? And she says, I certainly can. And she went on the website and she realized that they never posted the information that she thought was there. And she apologized profusely and she said, thank you. Thank you. I had no idea that it wasn't there. I will make sure it gets up there. How can I help you? And so that started the relationship. So even if they're curt, if you've done your homework and you know that the information is not out there and it's really valuable to you, then go ahead and ask it. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, they might be impressed that you asked the question in the first place, which leads us to the final magic step, step number 15. This is the step that very few nonprofits dare to think about. It's all about the relationship, the personal relationship. It is crucial to connect with a foundation insider to increase your success. If the phone call goes well, then ask to meet with them personally, or even better, invite them to visit your nonprofit to talk to you and see the kind of work you do. Once you meet them personally, now you have a substantial relationship that very few grant proposal writers ever achieve, let alone the nonprofit itself. Why? Why don't more nonprofits do this? Because they're afraid of rejection, they're intimidated. But remember, this is a partnership. Once you have met them, you can ask to share other parts of your once you have met them, you can ask to share other parts of your proposal and ask for their feedback. And here's where the magic happens in step number 15. Once they have given you feedback on your proposal, well, first, now they're invested in it. Second, they are very familiar with you and your organization and can make strong recommendations to the executive director, to the board, whoever is making the decisions. Third, because they have given you their own suggestions, it would be hard to not fund your proposal, wouldn't it? I mean, these were their own suggestions, their own words. And fourth, they know how the decision-making system works, and they can guide you through these unknown territories. And it is most important to sustain a relationship with this person before, during, after. Check in with them to let them know, check in with them to let them know the progress of your program. Invite them to events, invite them to volunteer, even invite them to join as a board member. I've had program officers tell me that they're surprised that more nonprofits don't ask them to sit on their board. Well, why wouldn't they? Remember, they have made an investment in your organization and they may want to see how that investment is being used. I have spoken with many foundation program officers over the years, and their biggest complaint, believe it or not, is that nonprofits do not ask for their advice and do not ask questions and do not communicate with them during the proposal process. Remember, they want you to succeed because it also makes them and the foundation look like they are investing in solid programs that make a difference. As promised, I want to share a couple stories to make the point of connecting with the program officer or director. These are both government grants, but the same principle applies to community and private foundations. So the first story is about a very large $1.4 million grant proposal to the Department of Education. It was a 5-year program of summer workshops to train teachers how to educate English as second language students. Now, one of the things that they wanted us to build into the proposal, as part of the request for proposal, was a budget to pay for services that might be needed for people with disabilities. So if they had sight disabilities or hearing disabilities or physical disabilities, this money would be used to accommodate them. And as we were moving through the proposal, one of the people on the team, and yes, we had a whole team kind of looking at this because it was a big project, they asked the question, what if no one with a disability attends our workshop and we've just put aside, I think it was around 90,000 over the 5 years for accommodations. What do we do then? What do we do then with that $90,000 that we have put in the budget? And so we contacted our contact person at the Department of Education, and we asked the question, well, look, if we allocate, let's say, 1,000 a year for people with disabilities, and let's say the first year nobody shows up, can we the second year then use that $15,000 to offer scholarships to teachers who can't afford what was really a minimal fee, but can we use that as scholarships or in some other way to help out teachers? And the program officer said, oh yeah, absolutely, that's a great idea. And I will tell you this, after we got the grant, we asked the program officer, why were we chosen for the grant over the other applicants? She stated a few things, but then she said, and what I was most impressed with was the fact that you thought through what happens if nobody with disabilities shows up. What do we do with this money? And we love the fact that you said you're going to use it to help teachers attend and help with their expenses, help with their registration, so on and so forth. So here's the point. If we had not contacted the contact person and been in communication with her, we never would have known if it was all right. And it actually became a major reason why it actually became the major reason we were awarded the grant. Another example was, again, it was a state grant, but it was smaller. It was only $25,000, but the maintenance crew at the university wanted to apply for a grant to create a recycling program. So I helped them. We worked on it, and we got the contact name and the number. And we were in contact with them, asked them a few questions, very helpful. And then we wrote the proposal, and they wanted to put a vehicle in there as part of the purchase on the grant to move recycled materials around the campus. So I said, well, listen, why don't we send this preliminary draft to our contact person and see what they think? And they said, can we do that? I said, well, sure. So we contacted him. He said, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Took a look at it. He got back to us and he said, well, the vehicle that you're saying you're going to buy is not a vehicle that the state will invest in. There are only two kinds of vehicles that they will invest in, and these are it. You have to choose between these two. Now, we would never have known that, but he knew it. And as a result, we did change the proposal and they got the $25,000 grant. And I have to tell you, these guys had never applied for a grant before in their life. And they were just thrilled with the results. And they ended up putting together one heck of a recycling program. So again, that contact person is crucial. And I will tell you, every time I have had a contact person that I was communicating with and they were helping me with the grant proposal, I was successful. But I have messed up and I have not done that. And usually because I couldn't find the name of the person, I couldn't find the contact. And I have to tell you, I really messed up. I'll give you an example of how I messed up. It was another government grant. In fact, it was the NEA. And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. Nobody would answer the phone or anything, but I assumed that the program that we were doing and the request for proposal that they put out were a great match. So we took probably a month and a half, 2 months. There must have been half a dozen people in on this. We wrote this proposal, we put it together, we sent it to them. And I know this sounds weird, but after about 2 months of not hearing anything, I finally got a hold of somebody and I said, I just wondered what's going on with this grant. And they said, oh, that grant. Well, unfortunately, we never got the funding for that grant. And so we're not going to be doing any funding. Now, I have to tell you, I wasted my time and the entire committee's time putting this together. We were so excited. What a letdown. If I had been able to get a hold of someone before we wrote the grant proposal, then we wouldn't have gone through all of that. We would have known, right? So always do all of these steps before you write a grant proposal if you want greater success. And I truly hope you use each and every one of them to fuel your nonprofit train with more grant money. If you liked what you learned today and you want to know more about the videos that are posted on Nonprofit Docs, click the like button and also subscribe. And if you want an outline transcript of this video, just click below. And if you missed part 1, steps 1 through 5, well then, click here. But if you want to know how to raise money from donors and the government in this confusing and crazy time, Mark Germano, who has helped raise over $750 million, will help us navigate these stormy seas next, right here.